Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here with the System Simplified podcast, where we interview top entrepreneurs, founders, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group. At Business Success Consulting Group, we create custom processes and tailor-made business systems so businesses can thrive and grow. And today's guest is Suzie Hall. Hi, Suzie.
Hi, Adi. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. I am so excited about this episode because, interviewing such an amazing entrepreneur is always such a pleasure for me because I get to ask you all these questions that I'm really curious about, and you get to inspire our listeners that they can make it. They can overcome obstacles. They can just continue on the path and really be successful. So, I'll do a short introduction, and then I'm definitely going to have you introduce more in terms of your companies and what you do. And I know you have an amazing story, so I'm going to have you share that as well. So you are the founder of 4 different companies. 2 of them, they're all related to interior design, and you do interior design for hotels. You have 2 main companies where you do the design and the purchasing. And then you have another 2 companies, which you're going to talk about. But you've been doing it now for about 30 years, having those 2 companies of design and purchasing for hotel interior design. You also have a degree in business administration, right? So you are savvy in business and also very creative. And that combination together, we're going to talk about it in terms of creativeness and business and processes. But first of all, give us a little bit of a rundown of your companies, the name of the companies and what each one does.
Sure, thank you. So as Adi mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of 4 companies, and Cornerstone Design is the first company celebrating 30 years in business this year, providing interior design services. We've worked in most markets, commercial, medical, multifamily, government, luxury residential, and our focus the past 5 years or so has been hotels. We also purchase the furnishings for our projects. They used to be rolled up into one company. I split them into 2 during COVID. Third company is the Cornerstone Collective, and that's our website, cornerstonecollective.net. And that is where we have brought in about 20 collective associates from around the world. Because as you mentioned, being a creative entrepreneur, being split right down the middle between right brain and left brain, I've always been like that. Over the years, I've seen creatives really be challenged in the business, the structural side of business, as I call it, with the creatives. They're brilliant at what they do, but they are challenged sometimes in running a business, being profitable, meeting deadlines, that sort of thing. So during COVID, when I had the time to peel back the onion after 28 years in business, I decided to create the collective and brought in a partner where we invited these associates in, and every single one said yes, because they saw the value of being able to do more, bigger, better together, very collaborative. So that's the third company. And we do hospitality, luxury hospitality, modular, multifamily. I could go on and on about that one. And then the fourth company is just brand new this year, and it's an outgrowth of my public speaking, and I'm writing a book as well. And it's what I call my personal transformation brand. So I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little while too.
Absolutely. Okay, good. So definitely very accomplished. Suzie, how did you get started? What made you want to be did you decide I'm going to open a company, or it happened, or how did you get on that path of entrepreneurship?
No, that's a great question. And I love to tell this story because I believe I was a born entrepreneur, right? And I started babysitting in 6th grade. I always had a job. I was always creating. But when I went to college at the University of Puget Sound, I enrolled as an English major because my high school English teacher really inspired me. And I went to her college and I became an English major. Well, the first year I decided I like writing, didn't know what I was going to do with an English degree. So I switched to business. In that time frame, mid 80s, the word entrepreneur did not even exist in our curriculum, which is really interesting now. So I went through and graduated college, and I ended up selling office furniture for Boise Cascade Office Products. And that was great experience. I think everyone should have sales experience, because at the end of the day, we're all selling something, we're selling ourselves, and that's part of relationship building. I still didn't know what I wanted to do, right, when I grew up. So I worked on projects with 2 certified interior designers. And that's where I had the light bulb moment, where I was like, oh my gosh, I can create and design, at that time, office spaces and put my creative side to use, but also have this linear path and help people improve their lives and their offices and their work environments. So that's where I started my career. Then when I moved to Boise, Idaho from the Seattle area in 1990, I worked for an office furniture dealer a couple of years. And then I was like, I just can't work for anyone else. I need to do my thing because I'm a born entrepreneur. Now, interesting background. I have a really unique background. The way I grew up, my dad was a major college football coach. He coached for the University of Washington for 12 years. He coached Nick Saban in college, and Nick Saban's the head coach at Alabama. He's a legend. And so the way I grew up in that big realm of college football, even being on the sidelines of the Orange Bowl, really exposed me to being willing to take risks, to think big, to be confident in rooms and settings with a lot of men, which going back 30 years wasn't as common as it is now. And it really gave me that vision that I can do and be anything I wanted to be. So when I launched my company, I was also starting a family. And I wanted to have a lifestyle business where I could work from home and I could start my family and really just have the two blend together on a daily basis. I didn't set out to build big companies or to own 4 companies 30 years later. It was just in my DNA, how I was wired is to create, to build, and to have my life be all encompassing that way. And so then I operated my business, starting in commercial interior design for several years. Then I went through a divorce and I went out to a commercial office space. And that's really when I started, working it full time, if you will. And that was in 2000. I started adding staff, even though my CPA at the time said, oh, you don't want to hire employees. They just cause problems and a lot of overhead. And I thought, well, how in the world am I going to build a business if I don't bring other people in? So that was one of the tips I'll share is, be careful who you listen to and, really trust your instincts, because I didn't listen. I said, no, I'm going to build my companies and got a new CPA. And then from the years 2000, even until today, it's been building, growing. And there's a lot to talk about there. But one of my, I think, differentiators is that I'm very open and tied into how my personal life influences my business life. Because as entrepreneurs, we're all connected, we're a whole, and it's very hard, at least for me, to leave personal things at the wayside and just drive on the business realm. So that's just a little peek into it.
Absolutely. So you went through, just like, just from the course of having a business for 30 years, there are the ups and downs, right? The roadblocks, the barriers you have to overcome. What was the hardest thing you had to overcome in that journey?
So in my 30-year career, I've had many challenging instances and times, but a couple that come to mind were first and you've heard some of my story, is in 2008, my husband at the time decided to have an affair with my best friend. So obviously that was a huge trauma. And trauma to transformation is something I talk about in my personal brand. But back then, that really affected me as the entrepreneur, and becoming a single head of household. Then a few years later, when he did it again and all that sort of thing, I really had to dig deep as an entrepreneur and decide, am I just going to give in? Am I going to give up and let life and trauma overwhelm me? Or am I going to dig deep and really learn how strong I am? I chose the latter. And so during that time, in the economic downturn of 2008, 2009, when this first one happened, by the time 2010 rolled around, we had our best year in business to date. And I really feel that that is because of a lot of the personal work I did and showing up strong for my team. And I'm a person who loves to have inspirational quotes. I read a lot, that sort of thing. And I derive a lot of strength from other people that way. And so I was able to share that with my team instead of just saying, oh, I'm empty, I don't have anything, and, good luck to everybody, and just let everything overwhelm, because there's so much negative talk out there. If we let ourselves listen to all of that, our input determines our outlook. And so I chose positive inputs so that my outlook and what I shared with my team was positive. So we came out of that last economic downturn extremely well. Well, then when COVID hit, I had just decided that we were going to focus on hotels and hospitality. We were having a good few years. We were on a rise to 10x our revenue in 2020.
Wow.
Then COVID hit. So in March of 2020, we had to recall $1 million of purchase orders that we had placed the week before for a hotel purchasing project. And I started to really become fearful. And I got to the point where I personally was facing possible bankruptcy. And I had never even considered that that would be a possibility. And there's lots of details around that. And I talk about that in one of the talks I give. But again, that was another time when I had to dig deep and I got to choose how I was going to show up. And this is something that my dad and that lifestyle really ingrained in me, is how we show up every day is what determines our future. And so for me, I instilled a very important morning routine and what I call deliberate practice. There's some good books on that. What we do over and over and over, and the habits we develop, is what shapes our future. And so in those dark early days of COVID, when this was happening, I chose to really dig deep and get up at 5 a.m. and spend, an hour or two even getting myself centered. And what that does is it opens up our minds to what's possible. And that's when the collective was created. So those are two challenging times that come to mind that I and others around me, with their help, have been able to overcome, rise above, so that now our deal size on our projects is close to $1 million. It used to be $10,000. So just last week, I closed a $2 million project. And that transformation in my business, I am convinced, would not have happened without my personal transformation.
Absolutely. What an amazing story. It totally gives me the chills when I hear it again. It's amazing, Suzie. And, we talked a little bit about before the podcast. I said, I'm gonna ask you questions about systems and processes, because we're all about systems and processes. But it dawned on me that you actually have a process on how to be a leader and how to be a great leader to your company by actually taking care of yourself. So I'm really curious about that morning routine. And I just love that instead of giving in, you decided to just take it to the next level and take care of yourself, so you show up for your team really strong. And I think that is an amazing message. So let's talk about that morning routine. What do you do?
Definitely. And this ties into the book I'm writing. The working title is You Can Be the Head Coach of Your Life. Because for so long, I was just letting life happen to me, traumas and issues and all that sort of thing, because I was frozen. And, that's a whole nother part of the conversation. But my morning routine, I had heard Warren Rustan talk about it. I had heard other really significant leaders. I'd seen my dad do it. And instead of just rolling out of bed, sleeping in late, pushing the snooze button and starting the day behind, I chose, okay, I'm going to spend the first hour or two of my day this way so that I can show up my best self. So I wake up early, and depends on the day and what I've got going. And there's a combination that I do. So I do meditation, gratitude, and affirmations. I'm a Christian, so I do a devotional and prayer and reading the scriptures. And I do breathing exercises, stretching, And then I allow myself and my mind to open up. And sometimes I get these inspirations early in the morning where a problem is solved like that. A problem that maybe I had been worried about, and that's one of the pieces of transformation. I don't worry about things very much anymore because I've learned over 30 years that I do the best I can by showing up this way. And then whatever happens, happens. And so then I'm starting my day in a really free, open, energized manner. And we're all energetic beings. So when our energy is centered and we are present with what, the day is going to bring, it just goes so much better. I also use the Oak Journal. I don't know if you're familiar with the Oak Journal, OAK, but it aligns with some of the teaching and habits I had already implemented. But it's a journal where every morning you write out 3 things you're grateful for. What is your focus or mantra for the day? What are the 3 most important things that you need to accomplish that day? And it's interesting because I used to write down like, oh, this meeting or this or that kind of in the weeds details. And what the coaching and the learning has been is like, no, think big. Think like, what is the most important thing today that can get you to that next 10x level, right? So that's been huge. And then you write out your day. I didn't used to look at my day ahead of time. I would just go with the flow. But by writing out the day the night before and then reflecting on it in the morning, it's like, oh, okay, now that my mind is clear, now that all that clutter is gone, I'm focusing on my day. Oh, this is what I need to focus on. It expands the thinking. Instead of a to-do list, instead of a calendar, it's this mind-blowing experience that just elevates each and every aspect of my being. And I highly recommend it.
I think it's beautiful. You just got me to think, instead of like when you look at the meeting, instead of saying, okay, now I'm going into a meeting, instead you can look at it and say, look at the result or the outcome of that meeting, right? So it's either, let's say you meet with a client, let's say I meet with a client, it can be, okay, so today we're going to change the way they look at something, right? Or change the way that they operate so they will experience expansion, right? Or if you have a sales meeting, then instead of, okay, I'm going into a sales meeting, then you can imagine or decide, okay, I'm going to close this big package, right? Or whatever it is, you're absolutely right. It's really looking at it with a meaning as opposed to just, okay, this is just another meeting. So you really put life into it, whatever you decide to put life, however you decide to put the life into it.
That is so well said. And so now I take 5 minutes or so before every meeting and I get energetically present if I need to clear something or breathe through it or whatever. But then you're right, thinking, what's the outcome? What is the next best, or what is the best possible outcome? And when we show up energetically like that, when we connect with those people in the meeting, that's one of the main reasons our deal sizes are so much bigger, because people want me in the meetings. They want, and instead of just being the interior designer, now I get to be like the head coach and the leader of projects, which you're right. I mean, that's been also a theme in my life. I've always been in a leadership role, but humans, they have an innate desire for consistency. So thinking about systems, it is really important for us to show up very consistently every day. I didn't know how I was going to show up or who I was going to show up being for many years, because I ran my company as that 15-year-old girl, which you've heard that talk. But now I'm a known quantity. And people, I can say, and clients have told me this, they enjoy the meetings and they enjoy learning what's going to come next, because I help them think outside the box. I help them elevate and not get stuck in the details. It's like, yeah, we'll figure that out. We'll figure out the payment schedule. We'll figure out who cuts the checks. We'll figure out this and that. Let me help you simplify not only your business, but your life. Because when our mind is clear and our lives are simple, it's so much better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is so inspiring and it's so true. This is like a whole system that sometimes we forget to actually implement, right? We are focused on the systems we will do in terms of the training and for employees, which is all very important. And I'm sure you have a lot of stories about that as well. But I think your own personal process, your own personal system is so important. And I've heard it from other entrepreneurs as well. So absolutely. So anything else that you can share in terms of that wow of grading from a deal size of 10,000 to a deal size of 2 million?
Yeah. So again, the reason I chose the hotel and hospitality industry was twofold. One, because I knew they had bigger budgets because of the size of the project, and they set aside monies for design and purchasing. But two, I thinking of lifestyle. I'm an empty nester. My kids are all successfully launched and, thriving in their lives. I was thinking about, how do I want to be spending my time? And I'm a golfer. I love to travel. I just love, the vibe of the hospitality industry. So those two combined, I'm in that space where I love what I do. And when we love what we do and we show up energetically magnificent, is what I call it, people are attracted to that and they want more of it. And they're like, oh, really? We can do that? Or, oh, you just helped me think about things in a different way. And so that trust that's developed that way has what's been, enabled us to get to this deal size. So right now I have a $25 million deal on the table.
Wow.
And it's really, really amazing because when I'm there, and a lot of times I'm the only woman, and they, the clients and the prospects experience that energetic confidence that I bring, they're drawn to that.
Absolutely.
And things fall away, because when we lead with the to-do list and the checklists and the technology and all that sort of thing, they're all super important. But when we lead with that, I believe we lose the magic that can happen in personal connectivity. And so I'm a big believer in systems and processes. Like, we do everything cloud-based now. Our team is fully remote and around the world, but not overwhelming people. Also choosing people. And I just heard this story about gold coins versus bronze coins. I want people that are drawn to the gold shiny coins and not just settling for the bronze coins. And so often I think people and employees can settle. Oh, here's my checklist. Here's my to-do list. Here's my calendar for the week. I've got these meetings, blah, blah, blah. Check. What if we inspired people to show up and to create more than what's laid out before them? And we look to companies like Google and Facebook and companies that have nap rooms and work schedules where there's more time off to recharge and rejuvenate and to create. And then they come back better. And so that's the inspiring space that I live and work in. And it's different than a lot of the environments that people are used to. And that's one of the reasons I think it's so exciting and attractive.
I think so too. And you made me think about so many things, but I'm really looking at it as, you do have to have the processes and the checklist, because otherwise there is anarchy, right? There is no order. The checklist and the processes and everything brings order. So then you are able to create. But what I love about what you said is bring the creativity into those checklists and processes and systems. Like, really understand why you are doing it, bring your own best into it, and bring it to life. How are you going to let's say you have a checklist to execute with 8 points. You can go and just, mechanically execute it and get to the end of it, and that's it, right? Or you can look at it and you go, okay, what's the outcome of this checklist? How can I make every point the best? How can I service the person in front of me by following up the checklist? How can I help my coworkers by following up that checklist, right? You just bring that life into it, and that doing it intentionally, that totally can elevate the entire thing. And that is how the creativity and the culture, intertwines with the processes. It just goes together.
Yes. And I'm split down the middle, left and right brain. I love process and I love all of that. In a creative business, different than an engineering firm, say, that's sometimes challenging. And when I think about systems, I think about people first and how they're going to use the systems. And I've tried over the years sometimes to force creatives into using this really rigid system didn't go so well. So what I've learned is that when I have creative design professionals, give them enough structure to be successful, for the work to be successful, the clients to be, elated, but enough room to move, because that's who they are. They're creatives. If I had an engineering company or something, very linear like that, I think, the systems might be a little bit more than they are in my design companies. So I think that's important for us as entrepreneurs to understand what type of company, what kind of culture, where do the people thrive? What really works best for them? And good, clear communication. Oh my goodness. I used to think that my employees could read my mind. And just because I thought something and I maybe gave them a sentence or two or something at a staff meeting, that they would take it and run with it. And then at the end of the week, I would check in and they'd be like, oh, I didn't know you wanted me to do that. So that was a big learning lesson for me, is to be really clear and concise with my communication and the expectations that are out there. So we use a cloud-based program called Podio, Podio, and we've used it for about 12 years. And it's a great cloud-based workspace, and it's worked phenomenally for our company. I know there's a lot of other programs out there,
Right.
But it gives us enough structure, but room to roam.
Absolutely. Having the right system is very important. And as you said, it's really important to understand what type of business you have and adjust the systems accordingly. I mean, that's what we do when we go to a company. As you said, my background is I'm an engineer, and I know that when I go to an engineering company, it's going to be much more detailed. It's going to be very more like an SOP, a standard operating procedure. But then when we work with creatives, it has to encompass that, make it fun and creative, and make it creative so people will be attracted to use those procedures, because it's something that they will see that helps them and not hinders them. So I completely agree that you have to adjust the amount of details that you go into, adjust the amount of freedom, adjust the amount of restrictions. So it all has to be adjusted to the company and not make it generic or one size fits all. So I completely agree with that point. So amazing. Well, Suzie, where's the future? What is the future like?
Yeah, so again, with these exciting luxury hotel projects, one of them is international, which will be our first solid international hotel project. And as I mentioned, writing a book, doing more public speaking. So it's really elevating all levels. I also have a real heart for providing opportunities for these other creative professionals to elevate their careers. And just got off a call with one of my team members in Texas. And, she's so grateful because she's a single mom. She's got a little girl, but she's a genius when it comes to hotel design. So she's really grateful for the opportunity to work how she's working. Again, it's not for everybody. It's a little bit different style, but she has the room to roam and the freedom. So I see myself being that head coach, if you will, for many design professionals, as well as clients and owners, to help them elevate and integrate their lives. And, I could tell story after story, but one that comes to mind quickly is we did a residential project about 8 years ago. And the clients were referral through a fellow EO member. It was his parents. And they had seen this beautiful kitchen in Italy, and they had a wonderful home in an area of town, but it was very dated. And they wanted to have this new kitchen from Italy in their existing home. And I walked in and I was like, oh boy, we're going to need to update the house. We can't just do the kitchen. And so I shared it with them. They said yes. And so fast forward, when we did the kitchen reveal, the wife just cried. She said, this is exactly what I wanted. And the project won awards and was published and all this sort of thing. And we're still dear friends to this day. And at the party after the open house, they invited their neighbors. They had never invited their neighbors to their house. And this is where I get emotional, because they cried. They said, thank you for transforming our lives, because it wasn't just design. It was the way that we did it and how we opened up their hearts.
Wow.
Now, that's my why.
Suzie, that is just amazing. And I'm so grateful that you're sharing it with us, because that moment right here and understanding why you're doing things, it's really you. And that's why you are successful. is because you come as yourself and really have that desire to help, which is amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing.
If we're not emotional and passionate about what we do,
very cold. Well, you mentioned EO, so that's Entrepreneurs Organization. That's where we met. So definitely a big shout out to EO. Yes. And I'm so grateful that we met and that you came as a guest to this podcast and shared that information with other entrepreneurs. And hopefully we inspired people today to continue on their path, whatever that is, and really find their why and follow it and create their lives the way that they want, and not be held by any stops.
Right. Listen to your heart. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Mm-hmm. Well, Suzie, thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast. Before we end off, if people want to find you, if they want to book you for speaking or read your book that is coming out, how can they find out about you?
Yes. So on the business, the Cornerstone side, it's www.thecornerstonecollective.net. And then my personal brand, which is more of the speaking and the writing, is www.Suzie Hall, SUZIEHALL.com.
Excellent. Definitely go and check it out. And Suzie, again, thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast.
Oh, thank you, Audie. It was such a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.